Hello Gemini, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for July for the Sun or the Ascendant. This month begins with the energy of last month's new moon, which occurred on the 29th of June, pouring its energy into this one. For you, the Sun's in house 2, very much to do with everyday resources, but of course the sign of Cancer that holds house 2 for you is about security. So financial security, I think, is going to be a theme. But Jupiter fed into that full moon in a square. So there may be part of you with Jupiter in your 11th house of the future, much more optimistic that things can head in your direction. It's just that there is quite a complex row going on between Mars and Pluto across the first 4 days. I need to tell you about that. I need to tell you that your ruler Mercury is going to sweep through 3 zodiac signs this month. So that's critical that I share that with you. But also the wonderful news of Venus moving into your 2nd house on the 18th. So please stay with me for more. But if you would like to ascend above this zodiac broadcast and understand how astrology can impact more on you as an individual, if you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place, I can give you a roadmap that you can use to guide you for the rest of your life, but also a 12-month personal forecast for the next 12 months. Now these reports will be totally unique to you, and you can get 30% off with my special offer. Please see the link below. So Gemini, as you come into this new month, let's just run through all the planetary positions. So we have the Sun in house 2, everyday resources, but in the sign of Cancer, very much to do with emotional security. There's a link. We then have Mercury, your ruler, in house 1, in other words, your sign. Now, this is wonderful because, of course, it has gone through a retrograde, moving out of your sign, back into Taurus, and then back into Gemini mid last month. And since then, I think something that did get a bit tangled up or snagged or slowed down or didn't quite get going in the way you wanted, or became a bit worrisome, or if your anxiety levels or nervous tension were a little high in the latter part of May and the early part of June, it wouldn't be a surprise. But Mercury can really help you to progress this month, because Mercury helps you to be very nimble in thought and deed. But also Venus is in your sign, so that's great if you want to give yourself some kind of makeover and use your artistic and creative talents to their very fullest degree. But you also have Mars, the planet of passion, in house 11 of friendship, along with Jupiter. Now Saturn continues in the part of your horoscope to do with higher truths, contracts and travel, and Pluto in house 8, very much to do with transformations, but in a more prosaic way about longer term finance and anything to do with business, mortgages and entrepreneurship. So as we start this month, the energy of the Sun in Cancer is very powerful, and it's being, if you like, given an extra dimension because of the role of Jupiter, which is in a square with the Sun as we come into this month, and has influenced that new moon. Jupiter is a very positive influence. In the 11th house, it tells us that if we collaborate with others, the chances are that can be good for us. Collaboration doesn't mean either losing our sense of individuality, and with Mercury and Venus in your sign, that's not something that you're going to give away lightly at this time. But also, the 11th house is very much about our future hopes and our highest principles. So I think when it comes to your resources, what you're wanting to do is to have them in order, but obviously you want to go about your business in a way which feels comfortable to you, and that's the idealism of Jupiter and Mars in your 11th house. But within that, you need to be your own person, Mercury and Venus in your sign. So that's how I see it as you come into this month. But on the 5th, Mars actually moves into the sign of Taurus. Now for you, this is house 12. And over the next 6 weeks, it could stimulate some unresolved emotional strands that lay deep within your subconscious to come up to the surface. So it can be a bit of an unsettling transit, particularly in the last 5 days of this month when it does go alongside Uranus. So just be aware that some information that you may not be conscious of at the moment, because you may feel that you've dealt with a past turmoil or unhappy separation or event, could just be a bit more active in the roots of your psyche than you may have thought. But look at it this way: Uranus is the planet of truth, and even if your nervous system has been over aroused since Uranus moved full time into the sign of Taurus on March the 9th, 2019, at least you are getting a bit of a crash course in understanding your shadow side, or the shadow side of other people, in a much greater way. But it's also giving you a lot of knowledge about what makes you tick and what makes others operate as well. But also on the 5th, Mercury moves out of your sign and enters into the sign of Cancer. Technically not at its best. It's a 2-week transit, but that desire for physical and financial security is going to be increased. So a lot of your interactions with Mercury going through the sign of Cancer, as it does quite swiftly, it usually takes 3 weeks to go through each sign. This month we've got one section of 5 days in your sign, 2 weeks in the sign of Cancer, and then from the 19th through to the end of the month, it is in the sign of Leo, which it will love. So that's a good change for you, Mercury into the 2nd house. You just need to make sure that you keep the clarity and the precision that Mercury can give us intact in what can be a slightly subjective transit through Cancer. Now in week 2, the Sun is actually forging a really positive link to Uranus in your 12th house. Past skills, talents, experiences, knowledge, connections could be reformulated in some kind of up-to-date way. For example, you may have had different phases of your career, but some of those skills or experiences that you have can still be very important. They're almost like a bridge to where you are now, but Uranus is saying, how can you repackage them? Perhaps using technology, perhaps working more independently, which Uranus loves, perhaps using that more psychological prism in terms of your life experience in a way which can help you financially. But do be open-minded about how that can work for you. Now on the 13th, we do have a full moon in the sign of Capricorn, and it actually forges a semi-sextile with Saturn in your sector of higher truths, contracts. If you do need to check through something in the following 2 weeks, perhaps a proposal that's offered to you, Saturn can help you to scrutinize this with great attentiveness. It's just that Saturn's in a more challenging 150 angle, a quincunx, with the Sun. And so I think that your desire to expand, which has already been somewhat limited or slowed or tested by Saturn in the 9th house, needs to be moderated. So I wouldn't rush any financial decision on the back of this full moon. Now of course the 2nd 8th house axis that this full moon arouses for you is not just about money. The 2nd house can be about our core values, but also our self-worth. The 8th house can be where we're most invested, the person that we perhaps trust the most. It's very scorpionic energy, so it's very deep and passionate. If something's a little bit out of kilter between how you feel about yourself and also how you receive rewards in this life that we're in, that may be something that you do need to look at. But I wouldn't be too hard on yourself, because Saturn could tempt you to over scrutinize, but it could also push you to learn new skills in order to earn more money. So we're living in a changing world with automation, robotics, the internet obviously, and the impact of COVID, inflation, and more recently the situation in the Ukraine. So your flexibility to redeploy those past skills but learn new ones may be something that can actually be very positive for you financially. And you get a clue of that on the 18th when Venus makes its way from your sign and into Cancer. I can almost guarantee you that within 2 or 3 days some good financial news will come. But it's just that the Sun then goes into a very punishing opposition with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and then Mercury, your ruler, repeats that, but for a more brief period of days, the 17th to the 19th. So you could have an intense discussion. So, for example, someone could offer you a deal, and if you've been finding it difficult to earn money, perhaps your role changed through COVID, it may feel very tempting to go for this. But with Pluto in the mix, you may feel that there's some kind of leverage on it, and that leverage may not agree with that sense of fairness that Jupiter is, in particular, is really promoting, a need for you to feel really respected as a human being. So a bit of a push-pull. You may feel the conflict is more at an internal level because maybe you feel you have no choice but to do something you don't entirely want to do in order to keep the money coming in. And of course, a lot of us are having these kind of challenges at the moment, but do believe in yourself, because Venus in your sign is forging a terrific link with Saturn just before it moves into the sign of Cancer. And that suggests that your creativity and your ability to articulate ideas skillfully, one of your great gifts, can actually, in its relationship with Saturn, be anchored very successfully. And then, with Venus moving into the second house and Mercury then speeding up quickly, dashing, flapping its wings even faster, and moving on the 19th into the rather grand and rather self-regarding Leo. And if you know anyone who's got Mercury in Leo, they've certainly got confidence in their point of view. So for you, this can see a speeding up, that agility that's very much part of your core being is emphasized. Then the Sun returns home, arriving in the sign of Leo on the 22nd, meeting up with Mercury. And this suggests that you may be thinking about technology, you could be thinking about meetings, getting together on a more social basis, but you're going to need a lot of mental stimulation. That's going to be important to you in this last phase of the month. The new moon on the 28th is also forging a gorgeous link with Jupiter, which ironically starts to rewind on the 28th, but it's still a trine, pretty well the best planetary angle you can have between two planets. So we have the Sun in its home zone, we have Jupiter in the receptive fire sign of Aries. Jupiter here is the 9th house of Leo, so where this new moon's happening. So this can give you a big push when it comes to expressing your ideas, getting together with group situations, reaching out to people who share your ideals or belief systems, but a lot of vibrancy. And I think really that's the journey of this month. There is, unfortunately, some a real need to grapple with some financial realities at some point this month, but also it could be a test for what you really believe in and how you're going to find your sense of self-worth and keep the foundations of your world intact. And if you battle through that, Venus can reward you, and then that glorious new moon, despite Jupiter's retrograde, can bring some real good luck into your situation towards the end of this month and through all of August. But I'll just revisit that combination between Mars and Uranus, which occurs right at the end of this month. So despite this upbeat stuff, you could feel a bit ragged around your nervous system if you're burning the candle at the proverbial, both of the proverbial ends. So Mars can over-arouse your adrenal system. So if you're feeling really excited in its combination with Uranus, so if you're feeling really excited by how things are shaping up, moving forwards, there's going to be a lot of sparkle, vivaciousness, and an effervescence towards the end of this month, just make sure that you are finding the tactics and the techniques to switch off so you can sleep through, recharge your system. I suffer with sleep apneas and I use CPAP, and I find if the mask is loose or comes off in the night, then the next day I can feel really sort of quite washed out. If it stays intact, my body feels full of warmth, my feet are warm, you can feel the oxygenation of the blood's really worked, and that shows the importance of sleep. So for you, towards the end of this month, it is important to look after yourself in terms of not overdoing it, but a lot of excitement as this month comes to a close.